We have the latest updates on the coronavirus outbreak from around the world. Grand Renaissance Dam dispute. Egypt and Ethiopia differ over new proposals by the US. And we focus on the role of nurses and midwives in healthcare. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In sports, Ghana Paralympic athletes set their eyes on the upcoming games in Japan. Our top story, the coronavirus outbreak. South China's Shenzhen city has reported a new case in a man who didn't have any recent travel history to Wuhan. The man is said to have just returned from the UK. Across China, 573 cases were reported on Saturday, the highest daily increase in a week. Most of them are in Hubei province, where the outbreak began. And more than 2,000 patients have been discharged from hospitals. China has almost 80,000 cases in total. More than half have now recovered, while more than 2,800 have died from the virus. Guangdong province has reported more than 1,300 cases, followed by Henan and Zhejiang, each with more than 1,200. Outside China, over 60 countries have reported over 7,000 cases with 121 deaths. South Korea has confirmed more than 3,700 cases with another death reported today. Italy has the largest number of infections outside Asia with over 1,000. Iran is the worst hit country in the Middle East with nearly 1,000 confirmed cases, and Japan has more than 900. Well, Italy says it will launch measures worth $3.5 billion to help the economy withstand the coronavirus outbreak. This comes as the death toll in the EU nation rises to 29, and the number of confirmed cases has now passed 1,100. Officials say universities and schools in 3 northern regions will remain closed for a second week. The areas affected are Lombardy, Veneto and Emilia-Romagna, which account for over 90% of Italy's cases. Elsewhere in Europe, Ireland and Luxembourg have confirmed their first cases. And in France, officials are banning events of over 5,000 people in enclosed spaces. France is the second worst hit nation in Europe with 100 cases and 2 deaths. Iran says the death toll from COVID-19 has now reached 54, with the number of those infected reaching nearly 1,000. The Iranian government has tightened measures to contain the spread of the virus. For more on this, we talk to Sabas Nasari in Tehran.
At the moment, there are plenty of measures in place by the government. We know still the government is adamantly sticking to the idea that quarantine is not a workable solution. But in the latest measure, they in fact sent directives to all hospitals not to admit non-emergency cases. I mean, they would just be kind of special places only for coronavirus suspected cases. That indicates how serious the situation at the moment is. Also, there are restrictions on travel between cities. They are conducting tests on entry and departure points. And in addition to that, we have a different announcement on state media asking people to stay indoors. Yesterday, the head of the Tehran metro station announced that the number of customers, the number of commuters actually have reduced by 70%, which is a big sign of how widespread the panic at the moment is. But the key issue still at the moment is the issue of the availability of masks and disinfectant liquids, as well as the kits which Iran is still hoping to receive from abroad, and especially from countries like China.
British health authorities have reported 12 new cases of COVID-19 in the UK. This brings the total of cases to 35. Some of those who tested positive were in close contact with a known case. Others had travelled from Italy and Iran. Only one of the patients had no relevant travel history, and authorities are following up to determine how that person caught the virus. Meanwhile, Chinese health officials have reported a rise in the nationwide recovery rate of COVID-19 to at least 52%. They say they've seen a consistent rise in recoveries across the country over the last week. The officials also say that they are focusing on the potential risks as companies and businesses resume work. It comes as the number of infections outside China continues to rise. The Chinese government has also pledged to help bring back Chinese nationals stranded abroad. Wuhan still accounts for the overwhelming majority of China's new cases. Medical staff there have been under enormous pressure. Sun Tianyuan is in Wuhan, and he tells us how medics are coping there.
I've spoken to doctors and nurses. They seem to be confident and ready for this long battle. For more on this, let's bring in my guest today, Dr. Xie Jingyuan from Shanghai Ruijin Hospital. They're one of the earliest medical teams that came here to support Wuhan. So welcome to our show, Dr. Xie.
Hi, hello.
So how long have you been here in Wuhan?
Actually, we have been here for more than 3 weeks, almost 1 month.
More than 3 weeks. So what was it like to work here when the nation knew very little about the coronavirus like 3 weeks ago?
Yes, when we first came here, I think we feel a little feared because, it's a new disease and we know little about it. But we know this disease has very highly contagious and even more than SARS. So, but after more than 3 weeks working here, I think we feel much better now because now our patients is less severe compared to the patients when we came here. Yes, I think the situation should be better. I think the protection is very important. And our team leader takes protection seriously, and we also take protection seriously. And he wants us every day, and it's very important for us. And what makes us feel safe because we have a very good team for the protection. They are very professional and give us a lot of helps. Yes. And for the treatment, I think for the coronavirus, we should treat these patients earlier. And some of the patients were getting worse very fast, so we need to earlier detection and earlier intervention in these patients. This is also important, yes.
South Korea has announced 586 new coronavirus cases, bringing the total number of infected people to over 3,000. 87% of those new cases have been found in the southeastern city of Daegu, from where Tony Cheng filed this report.
South Korean military trucks sprayed disinfectant along the streets of Daegu. The southeastern city saw more than 300 new infections announced on Sunday, and many are thought to have originated here.
This military decontamination unit is on standby, waiting to go into the church that has been determined by the authorities to be at the center of the spread of coronavirus in Daegu.
The soldiers move into position outside the Shincheonji Church of Jesus. More than 50% of the infections here have been traced back to this extreme Christian sect, the virus thought to have spread quickly during packed services inside. The Shincheonji sect, however, says it's been unfairly targeted as a source of the current outbreak.
I ask you to do away with the hatred and criticism against our members. Please stop this smear campaign and this persecution from some media outlets with the fake news and unverified information.
But the authorities are doing everything they can to track down those who are carrying the virus. This drive-through facility has already conducted 1,800 coronavirus tests in the past few days. Visitors are encouraged to remain inside their cars as they're registered and answer a standard questionnaire. At the next window, a doctor consults them about their symptoms through a headset and closed windows. They're trying to eliminate any possibility of cross-contamination with medical staff. Only at the last window is there any human contact, as nurses dressed in protective suits take swabs to test for the virus. And with the rapid rise in confirmed cases, the doctors anticipate much hard work ahead.
가장 나쁜 시나리오이면
The worst case scenario would be discovering more cases. I can't say if that would happen, but the hope is that we can diagnose people as soon as possible and get the situation under control.
With testing centres like this working around the clock, the authorities are getting an accurate picture of the number of infections, even if that is very unwelcome news. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Daegu, South Korea.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Grand Renaissance Dam dispute. Egypt and Ethiopia differ over new proposals by the US. And we focus on the role of nurses and midwives in healthcare.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The Ethiopian government says it will not stop the scheduled filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This comes after the US Treasury Department said Ethiopia should not fill the dam until it has reached an agreement with Sudan and Egypt. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more.
It all started with what the Ethiopian government called a disappointing statement issued by the United States Department of Treasury on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam a few days ago. The statement simply requires Ethiopia to not make a move of filling the dam without inking a deal with Egypt and Sudan. The Ethiopian government did not waste any time to respond, and the foreign ministry said, and I quote, Ethiopia as the owner of GERD will commence a first filling of the GERD in parallel with the construction of the dam in accordance with the principles of equitable and reasonable utilization and causing no significant harm as provided under the agreement on the Declaration of Principles, end of quote. The statement by the Foreign Affairs Ministry shared by the Office of the Prime Minister also said Ethiopia will not accept the characterization that the negotiation on the guidelines and rules of the first filling and annual operation of the GERD is completed. The text reportedly initialed by the Arab Republic of Egypt in Washington, D.C. is not the outcome of the negotiation or the technical and legal discussion of the three countries. It said Ethiopia made it clear that the guidelines and rules must be prepared by the three countries. Many Ethiopians, including those in the diaspora, are outraged. Some Ethiopians in the U.S. capital have taken their angers to the streets of D.C. They have asked the U.S. government to take its hands off the Ethiopian dam. Grumjala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Meanwhile, Cairo has issued a harsh statement criticising Ethiopia's announcement that it'll proceed with filling of the Grand Renaissance Dam, regardless of outcomes of the talks. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry has further accused Ethiopia of stalling negotiations. Egypt was keen to participate in this last round of talks, which Ethiopia skipped. CGTN's Adel El Makhrouki has more.
Describing the process as tiring, Cairo says its participation in the U.S. talks this week came as it seeks to reach a final agreement. The statement released on Saturday reflects Egypt's frustrations. Following the Declaration of Principles document in 2015, 5 years of continuous negotiations have not produced tangible outcomes. Egypt was hoping this week's talks would have truly been the last. Yet after the Egyptian delegation arrived to Washington, D.C., Ethiopia announced skipping the talks. In the US capital, however, consultations continue to finalize an agreement draft. Showing trust in the document, Egypt signed it in initials, calling Ethiopia and Sudan to do the same. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry says the document prepared by the US Department of Treasury and the World Bank preserves the rights of the three countries in the Nile. After this latest round of talks has concluded, the US Department of Treasury has released a statement reminding Addis Ababa that the Declaration of Principles document signed between the three countries states that the final testing and filling process should not start before an agreement has been reached. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The World Health Organization has declared 2020 the year of the nurse and the midwife in honour of their contribution to healthcare. Nurses and midwives are the first line of defence in healthcare systems, making up more than 50% of the health workforce in many countries. CGTN's Yolissa Njamela visited a maternity ward in South Africa to understand their work.
Midwives in South Africa are the frontline caregivers. They are the backbone of maternal and child health care. This is Tebogo Baloyi. She's one of the midwives at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital in Soweto. This is the largest hospital on the African continent. Tebogo tells us that it was certainly not her initial plan to be a professional nurse, let alone being a midwife. She studied and qualified for travel and tourism, tried to get a job in that industry, to no avail. Her mother would later suggest that she tries nursing, a profession that many in her family followed. She eventually applied and qualified for nursing and advanced midwifery. And right after that, she was placed here at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. She remembers her first baby delivery like it happened only yesterday.
There was this lady, I will remember specifically, she was in cubicle 18, she was a 19-year-old. It was her first baby. She had this very big abdomen, and then she became fully dilated, and it was during night duty. I remember calling out to one of the sisters, "Sister, shoulder dystocia," because the head was stuck. You know what the sister said? "What does your textbook say?" Like, I went like, oh my God.
Frantic and not sure of what to do, Tebogo would then call on a colleague to assist.
My fellow colleague, Prudence Mdalos, I said, "Prudence, please come." I said it in vernacular, but it was not as nice as I'm saying it right now. I said, "Prudence, please, ngine fully dilated shoulder dystocia. Sister is refusing to come." She came. Eventually, that lady delivered a healthy 4.3 kg baby.
That experience didn't deter her. In fact, it fueled her passion for this profession.
There is nothing like the feeling of seeing that baby. When the baby initiates, they transition from that first gasp, from fetal circulation to neonatal circulation. It's the most beautiful thing. And then to know that that baby, you deliver it, and then you help bring that baby into the world, that's the most wonderful feeling. So I really, really love being a midwife.
Her incredible passion is shared by the labor ward operation manager here.
And most of the times, I know most people will ask, why midwifery? We bring life to earth. So I believe we are next to God, if anything, because we are the first point of human beings that are there when a child is born. And that is the most beautiful thing when you hear that cry from a baby.
The profession is not without challenges, though. One of them is the lack of adequate resources.
We've got 20 cubicles here. And then the challenges that we have is the staff. We are catering to so many clinics around Gauteng. They all come to our hospital. And to make it worse, when the budget is allocated, it's allocated for South African citizens. They do not count our fellow brothers and sisters from outside the country.
But these nurses and midwives soldier on all the time. Yolissa Njamela for CGTN in Soweto, South Africa.
Meanwhile, in Zimbabwe, the country's health sector has been affected by the economic crisis. Nurses and midwives there continue to attend to their patients despite financial constraints. Let's now take a look.
Financial constraints have scaled down services at state-run hospitals, where nurses are now working just 2 days a week. But even that leaner schedule is still unaffordable on their current wages.
The situation remains the same. We are not capacitated. We are coming to work, but we're not capacitated, but we are subsidizing the government.
They're still turning up for work to avoid a total collapse of health delivery.
The people who are coming to the hospital for help, they are our relatives, they are our friends, and we live in the same community. So we cannot abandon them and leave them suffer, or perhaps they might end up developing complications that are detrimental and that can end up becoming difficult to manage.
A protracted doctor's strike and shortages of drugs and equipment have added to their workload.
We were turning back some of the patients home, but we were also forced to do some of the duties that the doctors do, like prescribing drugs to chronic patients. We were still reporting 2 days, but we make sure that each and every day there are nurses who are there, who are covering, who are helping our patients.
Apart from better pay, the caregivers also want better representation in the Ministry of Health, where key posts are held by doctors despite there being adequately qualified nurses. The marginalization has seen them being disenfranchised, a case in point being on a donor-funded incentive scheme.
This donor fund, it was initiated so as to retain us, the nurses who are on the ground. But to my never-ending astonishment, the people who are benefiting, there are people who are at head office, directors, deputy directors, and people who have influential positions.
Those challenges notwithstanding, the nurses say as long as they can find a way, they won't abandon their workstations. Farang Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Ghana Paralympic athletes set their eyes on the upcoming games in Japan.
How would you create your legend? On the fields,